On June 5, 1944, at a pottery airfield, Easy Company of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment is preparing to jump into Normandy. However, their commander, Lieutenant Meehan, announces a delay due to poor weather conditions. This gives the men time to reflect. They are all brought back to 2 years earlier. At Camp Toccoa, Georgia, the company is first formed under Lieutenant Herbert Sobel. Sobel is known for his strict discipline, always pushing the men to their limits with harsh runs, hikes, and constant inspections. In contrast, his subordinate, Richard Winters, earns respect through his fairness and steady leadership. Days pass and the training intensifies, and Sobel's incompetence also begins to show. His actions raise concerns among the sergeants, and though the men face punishment, Sobel is ultimately removed from his position while Winters takes over. With that, Easy Company continues to train, preparing even more as they ship overseas to England to study tactics for possible invasions. On the eve of D-Day, the men are nervous. While they are preparing to head to war, some have received devastating personal news. But despite that, they still board the planes together. As the aircraft flies into the night, Winters prepares himself for the danger ahead. On June 6, 1944, D-Day began. The Easy Company's paratroopers prepare to drop into Normandy, but as their planes cross the English Channel, German anti-aircraft fire tears through the skies, bringing down several aircraft, including the one carrying their commander, Lieutenant Meehan. Lieutenant Richard Winters, on the other hand, escapes the attack by jumping. But even though he survives, he lands far from his intended drop zone and ends up losing most of his equipment. With only a compass in hand, Winters begins gathering scattered Easy Company soldiers and other airborne men, guiding them towards Sainte-Mère-Église. Along the way, the soldiers face both tension and tragedy. Lieutenant Ronald Speirs, their fellow soldier, executes captured Germans, while Bill Guarnere, another soldier, disobeys Winters' orders during a skirmish. Soon after, Winters receives a mission to lead a small assault on Brécourt Manor, where German 105mm guns threaten Utah Beach. Despite being heavily outnumbered, his men carefully attack, destroying 3 guns but sustaining casualties, including the death of Private Hall, one of their newfound allies. Still, Winters secures a map revealing German defenses. With Dog Company's support, they follow the map and successfully destroy the 4th gun. That night, the men finally rested for the first time since the invasion, calling the encounter their baptism of fire. After the Normandy landings, a young paratrooper from Easy Company, Albert Blythe, becomes separated from his unit. As he finds his way, he meets other scattered soldiers until he finally reunites with his comrades. Albert is still unsure of himself, but Easy Company is already preparing for their next mission, which is to capture Carentan, a link between Omaha and Utah beaches. The battle for Carentan is more brutal than their previous fights with machine guns and snipers. Easy Company suffers heavy casualties because of this, while Albert struggles with fear in combat, even experiencing hysterical blindness due to stress. Yet, upon hearing encouragement from Lieutenant Winters, he slowly regains courage. During a German counterattack, Albert finally fights, killing an enemy soldier, and to show respect for his fallen opponent, he keeps an Edelweiss flower from the man's pocket. But not long after, Albert is struck by a sniper during a patrol. Though he's treated, he never really recovered, and he passed away in 1948, remembered as one of Easy Company's brave paratroopers. After their battle in Normandy, Easy Company returns to England. There, they receive new replacements, including Edward Babe Heffron, Garcia, Miller, and Hashee. They encounter tension when veteran Roy Cobb mocks Miller for wearing a Normandy campaign ribbon despite not fighting there. In response, Staff Sergeant Bull also mocks Cobb for never taking the jump, which silences him. Soon, the men prepare for Operation Market Garden, an Allied plan to invade Holland, cross the Rhine, and hopefully end the war by Christmas. Following this, Easy Company parachutes into Eindhoven, where the Dutch welcome them as heroes. But the celebration is brief as the team falls into combat immediately. At the village of Nieuwenan, the unit faces intense fire. A sniper strikes Lieutenant Brewer, and a German tank ambushes the men. With the British tank unable to support them effectively, Easy suffers numerous deaths, including that of Private Miller. Amid the chaos, Bull is cut off from the unit and seeks shelter in a barn, where a Dutch family tends to his wounds. When a German soldier threatens them, Bull defends the family before returning to his men. Ultimately, Operation Market Garden proved to be a failure, leaving the Allies quite regretful. In October 1944, Winters leads a single squad into combat in Holland. There, he launches an assault using mortars, covering fire, and a surprise bayonet charge. Easy overwhelms the enemy, but Winters personally kills a young German soldier during close combat, which leaves him utterly haunted afterwards. Though victorious, the unit suffers huge casualties, and Winters suffers the heavy burden of both leadership and killing. The squad takes 11 prisoners, but paratrooper Joe loses control and kills them all. To protect the men, Winters disarms him during the march back. Because of this, Winter's command earns Colonel Sink's respect, gaining him a promotion to battalion commander. With his position vacant, Winters appoints First Lieutenant Moose Heiliger as Easy's new leader. Unfortunately, Heiliger is accidentally shot by a nervous sentry, ending his command before it even begins. Easy then returns to France to take a break, but their vacation is quickly cut short as they are ordered to go to Belgium, where a German attack is happening in one of its towns. Under-equipped and uncertain, the men prepare to fight under their new commander, Norman Dyke. In December 1944, the men entered the frozen forests of Bastogne, Belgium. This marks the Battle of the Bulge. The town connects 7 major roads that the Germans must control if they advance. Easy Company, however, faces the siege with almost no supplies, no winter gear, and little ammunition, forcing them to endure constant shelling that shatters trees into deadly shrapnel. Amid this, a medic named Eugene Rowe struggles to care for his men with little more than bandages and morphine. Despite feeling powerless, he tends to them as best as he can. In a makeshift aid station inside a church, Rowe meets a Belgian nurse named Renee. She shares his compassion but also suffers from the lack of supplies. Over time, they grow closer, though tragedy strikes when a bombing hits the church and kills Renee. Back on the line, Easy suffers heavy casualties and deaths. Rowe continues his work, comforting the wounded, even tying Renee's scarf around Babe's injured hand as a symbol of their bond. Despite the grief, Rowe remains steadfast in his duty, giving strength to the men even during the darkest days of Bastogne. In January 1945, Easy Company fights in the town of Foy in the Ardennes. Under Lieutenant Norman Dyke, leadership falters as he remains absent and detached from his men. During this time, paratrooper Donald Hubler accidentally kills himself with a captured German pistol. Amid the hardship, Sergeant Carwood Lipton holds the company together, keeping morale alive with his steady presence even under fire. Days pass, the shelling intensifies, and Easy Company continues to suffer casualties. Bill Guarnere lost a leg, and many were gravely wounded. Soldiers like Skip Muck and Alex Pencala are also killed when a shell lands directly on their foxhole. Meanwhile, Dyke's incompetence shows further as he leads the men in Foy, halting the company in the open while giving reckless advice. Unable to endure it any longer, Lieutenant Winters sends in Lieutenant Ronald Speirs to take command. Speirs leads with courage, charging through enemy lines and rallying the men until they successfully capture the town. After the battle, Speirs recognizes Lipton's leadership throughout the battle, and his efforts earn him a promotion to lieutenant. Soon, Private David Webster returns to Easy Company after spending days in the hospital. However, his return is met with coldness and resentment as his comrades endure Bastogne and Foy without him. Webster soon learns of the unfortunate fates of many of their companions. Meanwhile, a young West Point graduate, Lieutenant Jones, struggles to earn the respect of the men, who see him as inexperienced compared to those who have suffered hardened battles. That night, Winters issues an order to patrol the river and capture German prisoners. With this, Webster persuades him to include Jones on the mission. Once the patrol begins, chaos unfolds. Jackson is mortally wounded and one of the prisoners is killed. Despite this, the squad successfully returns with captives. Tensions rise as some of the men want to execute the prisoners in anger, but Jones steps in to restore discipline. The next day, Colonel Sink calls for another patrol, but the men are all exhausted. Seeing this, Winters instructs them to report as though they carried out the mission but found no prisoners. His compassion lifts the team's spirits. In the end, both Jones and Webster prove themselves, finally earning acceptance from their fellow soldiers. When the war nears its end, Easy Company occupies a German town. While most of the men take time to relax, Captain Nixon, Easy's intelligence officer, struggles with personal and work-related problems. Meanwhile, Webster angrily condemns the Germans for starting a war that uprooted millions of lives. During a patrol, one group discovers a concentration camp near Landsberg. They rush back to Winters with the news, and he leads the men to the site. As they enter the place, they are instantly horrified. The camp is filled with prisoners. These are Jews, Poles, and other undesirables abandoned after the SS fled. Starving, sick, and dying, the survivors' situation shocked even hardened soldiers like Speirs. Eager to help, Easy gathers every bit of food and supplies they have, though a doctor warns that without urgent medical care, they will still die. Even Liebgott breaks down in tears as he translates the prisoners' pleas. In response, Easy forces the German locals to clean the camp and bury the dead, confronting them with the atrocities committed by their own people. Soon after, the men hear news of Hitler's suicide. Though relieved, they know the war is not yet over. Sure enough, orders soon arrive to march on Berchtesgaden, and Easy complies while carrying the heavy burden of what they have witnessed. Days pass, and the war begins to wind down for Easy Company. Winters takes a rare moment to relax by swimming before the men move into Austria. There, they capture Hitler's Eagle's Nest in Berchtesgaden. Inside, they find valuables and a vast wine cellar, which Winters orders to be shared among the men. Although they had expected to see SS guerrilla fighters there, none appeared. Yet the company continues to battle fatigue, frayed nerves, and boredom. Tensions rise when Liebgott executes a German officer tied to the concentration camps, and chaos also erupts when a drunk replacement kills and wounds his fellow soldiers before Speirs restores order. Soon, the team witnesses the Germans formally surrender. This memorable moment marks the true end of their war. Years after that, each soldier lives to have different lives. Some create families, pursue their careers, and have eventual fates. Still, the men find a way to celebrate their victory through a baseball game, and these veterans will forever be remembered for their service and sacrifices.